This 5-year-old girl can't sit still in class. Teacher lifts her skirt and calls 911 in panic. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. Eleanor Brooks had been counting down, not with excitement, with the quiet relief of someone who'd finally earned their rest. 35 years. 35 years of finger paints and runny noses, of scraped knees and forgotten lunches, of parents who cared too much and parents who didn't care enough. She'd seen it all. Or at least, that's what she told herself every morning as she walked through the doors of Meadowbrook Elementary. 8 months. That's all that stood between Eleanor and her retirement. 8 months of keeping her head down, following the lesson plans, and not getting too involved. She'd learned that lesson the hard way over the decades. Caring too much only broke your heart. It was the first day of the school year, and her kindergarten classroom buzzed with the usual chaos. Parents snapping photos, children clinging to legs, the smell of new crayons mixing with nervous energy. Eleanor stood by her desk, greeting each small face with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. Most of the children had arrived on time, their names already checked off her attendance sheet. But at 9:15, the classroom door opened one more time. A little girl stepped inside, alone. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, small for her age, with tangled brown hair that looked like someone had tried to brush it in a hurry. Her clothes were clean but faded, the kind you see at discount stores or handed down through too many owners. But what caught Eleanor's attention wasn't what the girl wore. It was her smile, bright, wide, perfectly timed, like she'd practiced it in a mirror. The kind of smile that appeared the moment an adult looked her way and vanished the second they looked away. "You must be Lily," Eleanor said, checking her roster. "Come on in, sweetheart. Find yourself a cubby and join us at the carpet." "Yes, ma'am," Lily said quietly, that smile never wavering. Eleanor watched her walk to the back of the room, moving carefully, almost too carefully, like someone navigating a world that might hurt if she stepped wrong. She settled onto the carpet with the other children, folding her small hands in her lap. The morning moved along as it always did. Circle time, alphabet songs, a story about a bear who loved honey. But Eleanor couldn't help noticing that Lily shifted constantly, never quite settling into one position. She crossed her legs, then uncrossed them, sat up straight, then leaned to one side. 20 minutes into the first activity, Lily raised her hand. "Yes, Lily. Can I go to the bathroom, please?" "Of course, honey. Do you remember where it is?" Lily nodded and hurried out. She returned 5 minutes later, that same smile back in place. Eleanor continued with the lesson. 15 minutes passed. Lily's hand went up again. "Bathroom?" Eleanor asked gently. "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry." "It's all right, go ahead." This time Eleanor watched more carefully when Lily returned. The little girl's face was slightly flushed, and she sat down with visible discomfort, shifting her weight. Immediately, when Lily asked for the third time in less than an hour, Eleanor felt that familiar tug, the one she'd been trying to ignore for the past 5 years, the one that whispered, "Something's wrong." But she pushed it down. She'd been teaching long enough to know that first days were stressful. Kids got nervous stomachs. They weren't used to the routine yet. It was nothing. Probably nothing. As the children gathered their things at the end of the day, Eleanor crouched down beside Lily's cubby. "Did you have a good first day?" "Yes, ma'am," Lily said, that practiced smile appearing on cue. "Good. I'll see you tomorrow, okay?" Lily nodded and walked toward the door where a tired-looking woman waited. Her mother, Eleanor assumed. The woman barely glanced at her daughter before turning to leave. Eleanor watched them go, then looked down at her attendance sheet. Beside Lily's name, she'd made a small mark. Not a note. Not a concern. Just a mark. As she erased the board and straightened the chairs, Eleanor caught herself thinking about the way Lily had moved. Careful, uncomfortable, always alert. She shook her head. 8 months, she reminded herself. Just 8 more months. But as she locked her classroom door that evening, one thought lingered, unwanted and persistent. That one's going to be trouble, if she lasts long enough. The first week of school revealed patterns Eleanor tried to ignore. Lily was different, not in the loud, disruptive way some children were, quite the opposite. She was quiet, obedient, almost too well behaved, but she couldn't sit still. Every few minutes she shifted positions, crossing and uncrossing her legs, leaning to one side, then the other, and the bathroom requests never stopped. By Wednesday, Eleanor had counted 7 trips in a single morning. Each time Lily returned with that same practiced smile, apologizing softly. "I'm sorry, Miss Brooks." "It's all right, sweetheart," Eleanor would say, though concern was beginning to creep in. On Thursday morning, something changed. Lily arrived early, her hair neatly braided, and participated enthusiastically during story time. She laughed at the funny parts, raised her hand to answer questions, and drew a colorful picture during art time. For 2 beautiful hours, she seemed like any other kindergartner. Eleanor felt herself relax. "See? You were worried over nothing." But after lunch, the discomfort returned. Lily's face grew pale, and she asked for the bathroom twice in 20 minutes. Eleanor decided to reach out to the family. That afternoon, she called the number listed on Lily's enrollment form. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. "Hello, this is Eleanor Brooks, Lily's teacher. I'd like to schedule a brief chat about how she's settling in. Please call me back when you can." No response came. The next day, Eleanor tried again. This time, she sent a note home in Lily's backpack, a friendly message requesting a parent meeting. The note came back. The following Monday, unopened, still folded in the bottom of the bag. Eleanor mentioned it to the school secretary. "I'm having trouble reaching Lily Patterson's parents." The secretary pulled up the file. "Mother works double shifts at the diner and the grocery store. Father isn't listed on the contact sheet." She looked up sympathetically. "You know how it is." Eleanor did know. She'd seen it countless times. Families stretched too thin, working too many hours just to survive. During Friday's recess, Eleanor kept a closer eye on Lily. The little girl played on the swings, pumping her legs, her laughter carrying across the playground. Eleanor smiled. Maybe she really had been overthinking things. Then Lily jumped off mid-swing, not high, just a normal dismount, and landed awkwardly. She stumbled, fell to her knees, and immediately let out a sharp cry. Eleanor rushed over. "Lily, are you okay?" The girl's face was twisted in pain, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Don't touch me, it hurts!" Eleanor scanned for injuries. Scraped knees, twisted ankle, anything visible. But there was nothing. No blood, no swelling, no obvious injury. "Where does it hurt, honey?" Lily just shook her head pulling away from Eleanor's outstretched hand. Within minutes, the tears stopped as suddenly as they'd started. Lily stood up, brushed off her knees, and walked back toward the playground equipment. By the time Eleanor caught up, the little girl was sitting on a bench, watching the other children play, that familiar smile back on her face. "Lily, are you sure you're all right?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm fine now." Eleanor crouched down, studying the child's expression. Nothing. No trace of the pain from moments before. That evening, Eleanor sat at her kitchen table, Lily's file open in front of her. She reread the emergency contact information, the sparse medical history, the single parent signature. Her mind replayed the week, the constant bathroom trips, the shifting, the sudden cry of pain followed by complete normalcy. What am I missing? She thought about calling again, pushing harder for a meeting. But what would she even say? Your daughter goes to the bathroom a lot. She fell and cried but seems fine now. Eleanor closed the file and rubbed her temples. Maybe she was seeing problems where none existed. Maybe she was projecting her own anxieties onto an innocent child. After all, she was tired of 35 years of other people's children, other people's problems. But as she turned off the kitchen light and headed to bed, one image stayed with her. Lily's face, twisted in pain, begging not to be touched. And then, seconds later, smiling as if nothing had happened. Eleanor told herself she wouldn't obsess over Lily Patterson. She had 23 other students who needed her attention, lesson plans to follow, and only 7 months left until retirement. Getting tangled up in something complicated now would be foolish. But Monday morning, when Lily walked in with dark circles under her eyes, Eleanor couldn't look away. The little girl moved slower than usual, settling onto the carpet with visible effort. During calendar time, she barely participated. When Eleanor called on her to count the days of the week, Lily's response was barely a whisper. "Are you feeling okay, sweetheart?" Eleanor asked gently. "Yes, ma'am." That automatic smile appeared, but it didn't reach her eyes. By mid-morning, Eleanor had made a decision. She needed to talk to someone, not the parents, not yet, but someone who could give her perspective. During her lunch break, she walked down the hall to the principal's office. Margaret Chen had been principal at Meadowbrook for 12 years. She was practical, experienced, and kind, but also protective of the school's reputation and careful about accusations. "Come in, Eleanor. What can I do for you?" Eleanor sat down, suddenly feeling uncertain. "It's about one of my students, Lily Patterson." Margaret pulled up the file on her computer. "New student this year. What's the concern?" "I'm not sure if it's a concern exactly. That's why I'm here." Eleanor chose her words carefully. "She's uncomfortable a lot. Asks to use the bathroom constantly. Sometimes she seems to be in pain, but then she's fine minutes later. I can't reach the parents." Margaret nodded slowly. "Have you documented these observations?" "Not officially. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. That's wise." Margaret leaned back in her chair. "Here's the thing, Eleanor. We need to be careful, very careful. You know how sensitive these situations can be. Without concrete evidence of harm, we're limited in what we can do. I understand that, but what if you're seeing something that isn't there?" Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "You've been teaching a long time. You're tired. It's your last year. Sometimes our minds can play tricks on us when we're emotionally exhausted." Eleanor felt her cheeks warm. "You think I'm imagining this?" "I think you're a caring teacher who's seen a lot of difficult situations over the years. And sometimes we start seeing patterns even when they might not exist." Margaret softened her tone. "Look, document what you observe. Keep trying to reach the parents. If you see something concrete, actual signs of harm, then we take the next step. But right now, a child who uses the bathroom frequently and seems uncomfortable isn't enough to trigger an investigation." Eleanor left the office feeling smaller than when she'd entered. Margaret was right, wasn't she? What did Eleanor actually have? A feeling, an instinct, nothing concrete. Maybe I am projecting. Maybe I'm looking for problems because I'm afraid of leaving and feeling like I didn't do enough. That afternoon, during quiet reading time, Eleanor watched Lily from across the room. The girl sat with a book open in her lap, but her eyes weren't moving across the pages. She was staring at nothing, her small face unreadable. Eleanor thought about all the children she'd taught over the decades. Hundreds of them. Some had thrived, some had struggled, and yes, some had been in truly difficult situations. But she'd learned to recognize the signs, bruises, withdrawn behavior, fear of going home. Lily had none of those. She was well-groomed, polite, and seemed to like school. Her clothes were worn but clean. There were no marks on her skin, no terror in her eyes. So why can't I let this go? The bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Children scrambled to gather their backpacks. Eleanor helped zip jackets and tie shoes, offering her usual goodbyes. Lily was one of the last to leave. As she walked toward the door, she turned back. "Miss Brooks?" "Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for being nice to me." The words were simple, but something in the way Lily said them, so formal, so rehearsed, made Eleanor's chest tighten. "Of course, honey, I'll see you tomorrow." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Margaret's words echoing in her mind. What if you're seeing something that isn't there? But another voice whispered back, quieter but more insistent. What if you're not? Eleanor decided to try a different approach. If she couldn't reach the parents, maybe she could reach Lily directly, gently, carefully, without pushing too hard. On Tuesday morning, she chose her read-aloud book deliberately, a story about a little rabbit who learned to ask for help when things were difficult. The children sat in a circle, listening intently. Eleanor noticed Lily paying closer attention than usual, her eyes fixed on the pictures. When the story ended, Eleanor asked, "What did we learn from the rabbit?" Hands shot up. "That it's okay to ask for help," one boy shouted. "That's right. And it's always okay to tell a grown-up when something is wrong or when you need something. Remember that, okay?" The children nodded and scattered to their activity centers. Eleanor watched Lily choose the art table, carefully selecting crayons from the basket. During snack time, Eleanor sat beside her. "You're a good artist, Lily. I liked the picture you drew yesterday." "Thank you, ma'am." Eleanor opened a packet of crackers and offered some to Lily, who took them politely. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence. "Lily, can I ask you something?" The little girl looked up, cautious. "Yes, ma'am. Is everything okay at home with your mom?" Lily's expression didn't change. "Yes, ma'am. Everything's fine." "And you're feeling okay? Healthy?" "Yes, ma'am." The answer came quick, too quick. "Practiced." Eleanor tried once more, her voice softer. "If something was hurting you, or if you needed help with anything, you know you could tell me, right?" For just a fraction of a second, something flickered in Lily's eyes. Eleanor couldn't name it. Sadness, fear, longing. But then it was gone, replaced by that familiar smile. "I know, Miss Brooks, but I'm okay." "Really?" The little girl's voice was so steady, so convincing that Eleanor almost believed her. Almost. "All right, sweetheart. I just want you to know I'm here if you ever need anything." Lily nodded and returned to her crackers, the conversation clearly over. The rest of the week, Eleanor tried smaller gestures. She made sure Lily always had enough supplies. She praised her work generously. She allowed extra bathroom breaks without question, never making the child feel like a burden. On Thursday, she tucked an extra granola bar into Lily's backpack with a note, "In case you get hungry." Miss Brooks, Friday morning. The granola bar was back in Lily's cubby, uneaten, the wrapper still sealed. Eleanor's concern deepened, but so did her uncertainty. Lily wasn't withdrawing. She participated in class, played with other children at recess, completed her work. On the surface, she seemed fine. But Eleanor had been teaching long enough to know that fine could be the most dangerous word in a child's vocabulary. That afternoon, as children lined up for dismissal, Lily approached Eleanor's desk. She held out a folded piece of paper. "I made this for you." Eleanor unfolded it. Carefully, it was a drawing. A woman with curly hair standing next to a small girl. Above them, Lily had written in careful letters, "Miss Brooks's knees." Eleanor's throat tightened. "This is beautiful, Lily. Thank you so much." Lily smiled, a real smile this time, not the practiced one. And it transformed her entire face. For a moment, she looked like what she was, a 5-year-old child, sweet and innocent. Then the moment passed. Lily's mother appeared in the doorway, and the little girl's posture changed immediately. She straightened, smoothed her dress, and walked toward the door. Without looking back, Eleanor watched them leave, the drawing still in her hands. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about that brief, genuine smile, and how quickly it had disappeared when Lily's mother arrived. She pinned the drawing to her refrigerator, next to old photos and shopping lists. Every time she walked past it, she felt the same nagging pull in her chest. Something's wrong. I know something's wrong. But knowing and proving were two different things. And without proof, Eleanor was powerless. She poured herself a cup of tea and sat at her kitchen table, the drawing visible from where she sat. The little girl in the picture looked happy, safe. Eleanor wondered if that's how Lily wanted to feel, or if it was just a dream she'd drawn because reality was too difficult to put on paper. The question kept Eleanor awake long into the night. How do you help a child who's learned to hide her pain so well that even she believes everything is fine? Monday morning, Eleanor made the call she'd been avoiding. She sat in the school office during her planning period and dialed the number for Child Protective Services. The woman who answered was polite but matter-of-fact. "What are you reporting?" Eleanor took a breath. "I have a student, 5 years old, who seems to be in discomfort frequently. She asks to use the bathroom constantly, sometimes appears to be in pain, and I haven't been able to reach her parents for weeks." "Has the child disclosed anything to you?" "No. When I ask, she says everything's fine. Are there visible injuries, bruises, marks, anything of concern?" "No, nothing visible." "Okay, we'll send someone to do a wellness check. What's the child's name and address?" Eleanor provided the information, feeling both relief and doubt. Was she doing the right thing? Or was she about to turn a struggling family's life upside down based on a hunch? 2 days later, a social worker named David Martinez arrived at the school. He was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a tired smile that suggested he'd seen too much, too soon. Eleanor met him in the conference room. "Thank you for coming." "Of course. Walk me through what you've observed." Eleanor laid it all out: the bathroom requests, the pain that came and went, the difficulty reaching the family, Lily's overly controlled behavior. David took notes, nodding occasionally. "I'll interview the child here, then visit the home. We should have a report within a week." He spoke with Lily privately for 15 minutes. When he emerged, his expression was neutral. "She's a sweet kid. Didn't disclose any concerns." "But did you notice?" "I noticed she's polite and well-spoken. That's all I see right now." 3 days later, David conducted a home visit. Eleanor waited anxiously for the results. The following Monday, the report arrived in Principal Chen's office. Margaret called Eleanor in to review it. "The home visit showed no signs of neglect or harm," Margaret read aloud. "The apartment was clean and adequately furnished. The mother was cooperative and concerned. She explained that she works 2 jobs to support herself and her daughter, which is why she's been difficult to reach. She acknowledged that Lily has been complaining of stomach discomfort and promised to schedule a doctor's appointment." Margaret looked up. "The social worker found no evidence to support an investigation." Eleanor felt the words land like stones. "But what about—" "Eleanor, they did their job. The system worked exactly as it's supposed to. Without clear evidence of harm, there's nothing more they can do. So we just wait. Hope that the mother actually takes her to a doctor. We document, we observe, and yes, we trust that the parent will follow through." Margaret's tone softened. "I know this is frustrating, but we can't intervene in every family's life based on a feeling. The law is designed to protect families from overreach." Eleanor left the office feeling hollow. The system had responded. Forms had been filled out. Boxes had been checked. And nothing had changed. Back in her classroom, she found Lily at the reading corner, turning pages of a picture book. The little girl looked up and smiled. "Hi, Miss Brooks." "Hi, sweetheart. How are you feeling today?" "Good, ma'am." That afternoon, Eleanor tried calling Lily's mother one more time. This time, a woman answered. "Hello? Mrs. Patterson? This is Eleanor Brooks, Lily's teacher." "Oh, hi." The woman's voice was tired, wary. "I wanted to follow up about the parent-teacher meeting. I've been trying to reach you." "I know. I'm sorry. I work a lot. It's hard to find time." "I understand. I just wanted to discuss how Lily's doing in class, and I know the social worker mentioned some health concerns." "I'm handling it." The defensiveness in her voice was sharp. "I'm taking her to the doctor this weekend." "That's wonderful. I just want to make sure—" "Look, I appreciate your concern, but I'm doing the best I can. Lily's fine. She's fed, she's clothed, she's loved. That's all that matters, right?" Before Eleanor could respond, the line went dead. Eleanor stared at the phone, frustration and helplessness washing over her. She'd done everything right, reported her concerns, followed protocol, reached out to the family. And the message was clear. Back off. That evening, colleagues tried to reassure her. You did your part, Eleanor. You can't save every child. But as she drove home, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that doing her part wasn't enough. She thought about the report. No signs of neglect. Mother cooperative. Everything looked fine on paper. But Eleanor had learned long ago that the worst suffering often happened in homes that looked perfectly fine from the outside. The following weeks settled into a new normal that felt anything but normal. Eleanor stopped fighting the system. She stopped calling home. She stopped filing reports. Instead, she did the only thing left in her power. She made accommodations. When Lily asked to use the bathroom, Eleanor never questioned it. She simply nodded and let her go, no matter how many times it happened. When the little girl shifted uncomfortably in her chair, Eleanor quietly offered an extra cushion from the reading corner. When Lily needed to lie down during story time, Eleanor allowed it without drawing attention. The other children noticed, of course. Children always did. How come Lily gets to lie down and we don't? One boy complained. Eleanor knelt to his level. Everyone's body is different, sweetheart. Sometimes people need different things to feel comfortable. That doesn't mean it's not fair. It means we're being kind. The explanation seemed to satisfy most of them, but Eleanor caught a few curious glances throughout the day. She hated singling Lily out, even with good intentions, but what choice did she have? The worst part was watching pain become routine. By late October, Lily's discomfort was so constant that it had simply become part of who she was in the classroom. The girl who always needed the bathroom. The girl who couldn't sit still. The girl who winced when she thought no one was looking. And Eleanor had run out of ways to help. One Tuesday afternoon, Lily returned from her 5th bathroom trip of the morning. Her eyes were red, though she wasn't crying. She slipped back into her seat, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Eleanor was helping another student with a worksheet when she heard a small voice. Miss Brooks? She looked up. Lily stood beside her desk, shoulders hunched. Yes, honey. I'm sorry. The words were barely a whisper. Eleanor's heart clenched. Sorry for what? For going to the bathroom so much. For being trouble. Eleanor set down her pen and turned fully toward the child. She wanted to pull her into a hug, to promise that everything would be okay, to demand answers from someone, anyone, who could actually help. Instead, she smiled gently. Lily, you are not trouble. Do you understand me? You're a wonderful student and you're not bothering me at all. But I keep asking, and I keep saying yes because that's what teachers do. We help. You don't need to apologize for needing help. Lily nodded, but Eleanor could see she didn't believe it. The little girl had learned somewhere, somehow, that her needs were a burden. Go back. To your seat, sweetheart. You're doing just fine. Lily walked away, and Eleanor felt the weight of her own helplessness settle deeper. By November, the pattern was so established that even Eleanor had begun to accept it. Lily arrived each morning, participated as much as her discomfort allowed, made frequent bathroom trips, and left each afternoon with her mother, who still never made eye contact with Eleanor. The other teachers had moved on. How's that student you were worried about? One colleague asked in the break room. Still the same, Eleanor replied. Well, you tried. Sometimes. That's all you can do. Eleanor nodded, but the words felt hollow. One Friday afternoon, as children gathered their backpacks, Lily approached Eleanor's desk. She was moving more slowly than usual, her face pale. Are you all right, Lily? Yes, ma'am, the automatic response, but Eleanor noticed the way Lily braced herself against the desk, the way her breathing seemed shallow. Do you need to see the nurse? No, ma'am. I'm okay. Eleanor watched helplessly as Lily joined the dismissal line. The little girl had become so skilled at hiding her pain that Eleanor wondered if she even recognized it herself anymore. Maybe this was just her life now. Maybe Lily had learned to exist in a constant state of discomfort, and everyone around her, including Eleanor, had learned to accept it. That night, Eleanor sat in her living room, Lily's drawing still on her refrigerator, visible through the kitchen doorway. She'd made accommodations. She'd been kind. She'd done everything within her limited power. But deep down, Eleanor knew the truth. Kindness wasn't enough when a child was suffering, and making someone comfortable in their pain wasn't the same as stopping it. The question that haunted her was simple and terrible. How long could a 5-year-old live like this before something gave way? That weekend, Eleanor found herself unable to escape thoughts of Lily. She tried to distract herself with errands, gardening, phone calls with old friends, but the little girl's face kept appearing in her mind. Saturday evening, while looking for an old recipe box in the hall closet, Eleanor accidentally knocked over a stack of photo albums. They tumbled to the floor, pages splaying open. She knelt to gather them, and one particular photograph caught her eye. It was herself at 5, years old, small, serious, wearing a yellow dress her mother had sewn. She was holding her mother's hand, standing in front of their old house. The grip was tight, trusting, absolute. Eleanor picked up the photo, studying the little girl she'd been. She remembered that day vaguely. It had been her first day of kindergarten. She'd been terrified, but her mother had promised to pick her up right after school, and she had. Eleanor remembered the relief of seeing her mother's face in the pickup line, the safety of that familiar hand taking hers, the certainty that if anything hurt, if anything scared her, someone would make it better. She'd never questioned whether her mother would be there. She'd never had to hide discomfort or apologize for needing help. She'd been allowed to simply be a child. Lily didn't have that. Eleanor sat on the floor, surrounded by albums, the photograph still in her hands. When had she last felt truly safe? When had Lily ever felt that way? The comparison was stark and painful. Eleanor had grown up with security, with attentive parents, with the luxury of childhood innocence. Lily was growing up with, what? A mother stretched too thin, pain that no one seemed able or willing to address, the learned behavior of making herself as small and untroubling as possible. Eleanor thought about all the children she'd taught over 35 years, hundreds of them. She'd cared about them all in her way. But she'd also learned to maintain distance, to not let their struggles consume her. When had she become so good at protecting herself that she'd stopped truly seeing them? She placed the photograph back in the album and closed it gently. The little girl in the yellow dress seemed to stare at her from the past, asking a question Eleanor didn't want to answer. What would you want someone to do if that little girl was suffering and everyone kept saying she was fine? Eleanor stood, her knees aching from sitting on the floor. She put the albums away and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. She kept seeing two images side by side, herself at 5, holding her mother's hand with complete trust, and Lily at 5, moving through the world like someone who'd learned that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Sunday morning, Eleanor woke with a headache and a decision half-formed in her mind. She couldn't keep doing nothing. She couldn't keep accepting that accommodation was the same as care. But what could she do? She'd already reported her concerns. The system had responded and found nothing actionable. The mother had made it clear that Eleanor's involvement wasn't welcome. She made coffee and sat at her kitchen table, staring at Lily's drawing on the refrigerator. Miss Brooks is nice. Nice isn't enough, Eleanor thought. Nice doesn't stop pain. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Eleanor drove to school with a knot in her stomach, unsure what she was feeling. Dread, determination, or something in between. She unlocked her classroom, turned on the lights, and arranged the day's materials. Children would arrive soon. Lily would arrive soon. And Eleanor would smile and accommodate and document and worry, just like she'd been doing for weeks. But something had shifted. Looking at that photograph, remembering what it felt like to be 5 and safe, had cracked something open inside her. She couldn't save every child, she knew that. But maybe she could stop pretending that Lily was fine just because the system said so. The morning bell rang. Children began filtering in, backpacks bouncing, voices chattering. Eleanor greeted each one, watching the door. Lily didn't arrive with the first group, or the second. By 9:30, her seat was still empty. Eleanor checked her attendance sheet, frowning. She walked to the office during a break and asked the secretary, "Is Lily Patterson absent today?" The secretary checked the system. "No call from the parent. Want me to try reaching her?" "Yes, please." The call went to voicemail. Tuesday came. Lily's seat remained empty. Wednesday, still absent. Eleanor felt anxiety building in her chest. 3 days without word. 3 days of silence. Thursday afternoon, Eleanor called the office again. "Any word from Lily Patterson's family?" "Nothing yet. It happens sometimes, Eleanor. Kids get sick." But Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. Friday morning, when Lily finally walked through the classroom door, Eleanor's relief lasted exactly 3 seconds, until she saw the little girl's face. Lily looked worse than Eleanor had ever seen her. The little girl moved like every step required deliberate effort. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and the dark circles under her eyes had deepened into bruise-like shadows. She walked to her cubby slowly, carefully placing her backpack inside before joining the other children on the carpet. Eleanor's heart raced. She wanted to rush over, to demand answers, but she forced herself to remain calm. Overreacting would only scare Lily, and possibly push her further into silence. "Good morning, Lily," Eleanor said gently. "We missed you this week. Are you feeling better?" "Yes, ma'am." The voice was barely audible. "Did you go to the doctor?" Lily hesitated, then shook her head slightly. Eleanor's stomach dropped. "Is your mom planning to take you this weekend?" Another pause. "She said she will. On Saturday." The words were delivered flatly, without conviction. Eleanor recognized that tone. It was the sound of a promise heard too many times to believe anymore. Throughout the morning, Lily barely participated. She didn't raise her hand during calendar time. She picked at her morning snack without eating. And the bathroom requests, which had been frequent before, now came every 10 to 15 minutes. By mid-morning, Eleanor couldn't stay silent any longer. She knelt beside Lily's desk during independent work time. "Sweetheart, I need you to be honest with me. Are you hurting right now?" Lily's eyes met hers for just a moment, and in that brief glance, Eleanor saw something that made her breath catch. Not just pain, exhaustion, the kind that came from fighting something for too long. "A little bit," Lily whispered. "Can you show me where?" Lily's small hand moved to her stomach, then lower. She didn't say anything else, but she didn't need to. "How long has it been hurting like this?" Lily looked down at her paper. "I don't remember when it didn't hurt." The admission was so quiet, so defeated, that Eleanor had to fight to keep her voice steady. "Okay, honey, thank you for telling me." She stood, her mind racing. A child who couldn't remember not being in pain. A mother who kept promising doctor visits that never happened. A system that had already investigated and found nothing wrong. During art time, while the other children painted cheerful autumn trees, Lily sat at the table with a blank piece of paper in front of her. She picked up a red crayon and began drawing, slowly, methodically. Eleanor watched from across the room. The drawing took shape, a small figure lying down, surrounded by dark scribbles. No sun, no flowers, no other people. Just the figure and the darkness. When Lily finished, she set down the crayon and stared at the paper. Eleanor approached carefully. "That's an interesting picture, Lily. Can you tell me about it?" Lily looked up at her, and for the first time there were no defenses in her expression. No practiced smile, no automatic reassurance. Just a 5-year-old child who was tired of pretending. "It hurts every day," she said simply. The words hung in the air between them. Eleanor felt something break inside her chest, not dramatically, but like a door quietly opening after being locked for too long. "Every day?" she repeated softly. Lily nodded. "Have you told your mom?" "Yes, ma'am, lots of times. She says it'll get better." "But it hasn't?" Lily shook her head. Eleanor swallowed hard. "Okay, thank you for telling me the truth." She took the drawing and placed it carefully in Lily's folder, her hands trembling slightly. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Eleanor went through the motions, read a story, supervised lunch, managed recess. But her mind was elsewhere, turning over possibilities, calculating risks. At dismissal, Lily's mother appeared in the doorway, looking even more exhausted than usual. Eleanor considered approaching her, trying one more time to communicate the urgency of the situation. But before she could move, Lily was already walking toward the door, her small backpack dragging slightly. The little girl paused at the threshold and glanced back at Eleanor. Their eyes met. Eleanor saw the question there, unspoken but clear. "Are you going to help me?" And for the first time in weeks, Eleanor knew her answer. That evening she sat at her kitchen table with Lily's drawing in front of her, the small figure surrounded by darkness, the red crayon, pressed so hard in places that it had nearly torn through the paper. "It hurts every day." Eleanor picked up her phone and stared at it for a long moment. She thought about the system that had already told her there was nothing to be done. She thought about the mother who'd asked her to back off. She thought about her 7 remaining months until retirement, and how much easier it would be to just let this go. Then she thought about a 5-year-old girl who couldn't remember what it felt like not to be in pain. She thought about herself at 5, holding her mother's hand, safe and loved. And she realized that sometimes doing the right thing meant refusing to accept fine as an answer. Monday morning, Eleanor requested an emergency meeting with Principal Chen and the school's guidance counselor, Mrs. Davis. They gathered in the conference room during Eleanor's planning period. Eleanor brought Lily's drawing and a written log of everything she'd observed over the past 2 months. "I need to talk about Lily Patterson again," Eleanor began, her voice firmer than she felt. Principal Chen sighed gently. "Eleanor, we've already been through this. Child Services investigated and found nothing, I know. But look at this." Eleanor slid the drawing across the table. "She drew this last Friday, and when I asked her about it, she told me it hurts every day, every single day." Mrs. Davis studied the drawing, her expression troubled. "Did she specify what hurts?" "Her stomach area. And she said she's told her mother repeatedly, but nothing changes." Principal Chen folded her hands. "That's concerning, but it's not evidence of neglect. Some children have chronic health issues. It's possible the mother is trying to address it, and just hasn't found answers yet." "She's been promising to take Lily to the doctor for weeks," Eleanor pressed. "She told me she'd take her this past Saturday. I asked Lily this morning. They didn't go. That's disappointing, but again, not illegal. We can't force parents to seek medical care unless the child is in immediate danger." Eleanor felt frustration rising in her throat. "How do we know she's not in danger? She's clearly suffering." "Eleanor." Principal Chen's voice was kind but final. "I understand your concern. I truly do. But we've followed protocol. We reported to CPS. They investigated. The home was adequate, the child was cared for, and there were no signs of abuse or severe neglect. We cannot launch a personal campaign against this family based on your feelings, no matter how well-intentioned." "This isn't about my feelings, isn't it?" Mrs. Davis interjected gently. "Eleanor, you're retiring soon. Is it possible you're holding on to this case because you're worried about leaving? Sometimes, at the end of a long career, we feel like we need one more success, one more child to save." Eleanor stared at her, stunned. "You think I'm making this up?" "No one thinks that," Principal Chen said quickly. "But we do. Think you might be overly invested, and that's understandable, but it's also clouding your judgment." Eleanor gathered her papers, her hands shaking. So we do nothing? We just watch a child suffer because the paperwork says everything's fine? We document, we observe, and if anything changes, anything concrete, we act. That's all we can do within the law. Eleanor stood. Then the law is failing her. She walked out before either of them could respond. Back in her classroom, she stood by the window, watching children play at recess. She spotted Lily sitting alone on a bench, knees pulled to her chest. Eleanor thought about quitting, about washing her hands of this impossible situation, about protecting herself from the heartbreak of caring too much. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am too close to this. Maybe I should just accept that I can't save everyone. The thought settled over her like a heavy blanket, suffocating but oddly comforting. It would be so much easier to stop fighting. She could coast through her remaining months, retire with dignity, and let someone else worry about Lily Patterson. The bell rang. Children streamed back inside, rosy-cheeked and energetic. Lily was one of the last to enter. She walked past Eleanor's desk without making eye contact, moving like someone twice her age. Eleanor watched her settle into her seat, watched her try to find a comfortable position, watched her give up and simply sit still, enduring. And Eleanor realized something. She could accept a lot of things. She could accept an imperfect system, bureaucratic limitations, and her own powerlessness. But she couldn't accept watching a child suffer in silence while everyone around her decided it was easier to look away. That afternoon, while the children worked on a quiet activity, Eleanor pulled out her phone and stared at it. She didn't know what she was going to do. She'd exhausted official channels. The system had spoken. But maybe there was one more thing she hadn't tried. She thought about the moment Lily's mother had hung up on her. The defensive tone, the exhaustion, the fear. What if the problem wasn't that the mother didn't care? What if she was just as trapped as her daughter, caught in a cycle of work and bills and impossible choices? Eleanor wasn't sure. She wasn't sure of anything anymore. But as she looked at Lily, hunched over her paper, quietly existing in pain, Eleanor made a decision. She would rather be wrong and look foolish than be right and do nothing, even if it meant risking everything in her final months of teaching, even if it meant standing alone. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is convince yourself that staying silent is the same as staying safe. It happened on a Tuesday. The day started ordinarily enough. Eleanor had planned a music activity, simple songs with hand motions that the children loved. She put on a cheerful melody, and the classroom filled with giggles and off-key singing. Lily sat in the circle with the others, trying to participate. She clapped along, though her movements were slower, more careful. Eleanor noticed but didn't intervene. Let her be a child for a moment, she thought. Let her have this. They were halfway through. If you're happy and you know. When it happened. Lily stopped clapping. Her hands dropped to her lap. Her face, already pale, went completely white. Eleanor noticed immediately. Lily? The little girl didn't respond. She sat perfectly still, staring at nothing. Then slowly, so slowly it seemed to happen in stages, Lily leaned forward and curled into herself. No scream, no dramatic collapse, just a quiet, controlled motion, as if her body was trying to make itself as small as possible. The other children kept singing, oblivious. Eleanor crossed the room quickly, kneeling beside Lily. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Lily's eyes were open but unfocused. Her breathing came in short, shallow bursts. "Lily, can you hear me?" The little girl's hands were trembling. She pressed them against her stomach, her small face twisted in silent agony. Eleanor's heart hammered. This wasn't like before. This was different, worse. "Does it hurt?" Eleanor asked, keeping her voice calm even as panic rose in her chest. Lily managed the smallest nod. Eleanor turned to her assistant teacher. "Mrs. Rodriguez, please take the children to the library, now." The assistant understood immediately. Within minutes, the classroom was empty, except for Eleanor and Lily. Eleanor knelt closer. Lily, I need you to talk to me. Where does it hurt? Everywhere, Lily whispered, the word barely audible. Eleanor's mind raced. Call the nurse? Call the mother? Call… She looked at Lily again. The child's lips had a faint blue tinge. Her breathing was too fast, too shallow. This wasn't something that could wait for a nurse to assess. This wasn't something that could wait for a mother who might not answer her phone. Eleanor pulled out her cell phone, her hands shaking. She stared at the screen for 3 seconds that felt like an eternity. What if I'm overreacting? What if this embarrasses the family? What if I'm wrong? But then she looked at Lily. 5 years old, curled on the floor, suffering in the same quiet way she'd been suffering for months, and Eleanor knew. She dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Eleanor's voice came out steadier than she felt. I need an ambulance at Meadowbrook Elementary School. I have a 5-year-old student. I don't know exactly what's wrong, but she's in serious distress. What are her symptoms? Severe pain, difficulty breathing. She's very pale. Eleanor's voice cracked. Please, just send someone. An ambulance is on the way. Stay with the child. Keep her calm. Eleanor set the phone down and returned her attention to Lily. Help is coming, sweetheart. You're going to be okay. Lily's eyes found hers. There was no smile now, no pretense, just a child, scared and hurting, looking for someone to make it stop. I'm sorry, Lily whispered. Sorry for what, honey? For being trouble. Eleanor's throat tightened. She reached out carefully and brushed Lily's hair back from her forehead. You are not trouble. You hear me? You're brave and strong, and none of this is your fault. Lily closed her eyes. The minutes crawled by. Eleanor kept talking. Gentle, meaningless words meant only to fill the silence and remind Lily she wasn't alone. She heard sirens in the distance, growing louder. Footsteps in the hallway. The door opened. 2 paramedics entered with equipment and calm efficiency. What do we have? The first one asked. Eleanor stood, giving them space. 5-year-old female, experiencing severe abdominal pain, shallow breathing. She's been having discomfort for weeks, but this is the worst I've seen. The paramedic knelt beside Lily. Hi there. Sweetheart, my name's Marcus. We're going to help you feel better, okay? Lily nodded weakly. They worked quickly, checking vitals, asking questions Eleanor couldn't answer. Medical history. She didn't know. Allergies. She didn't know. Previous conditions. She didn't know. The second paramedic looked up at Eleanor. Are you the parent? No, I'm her teacher. The mother hasn't arrived yet. We'll need consent. She's in pain, Eleanor said firmly. Please, just help her. The paramedic nodded. We'll transport. You can ride with us if you're the supervising adult. Eleanor grabbed her phone and bag. I'm coming. As they lifted Lily onto a stretcher, the little girl reached out. Eleanor took her hand immediately. I'm right here, Lily. I'm not leaving you. They moved through the hallway, past wide-eyed staff and curious students. Into the ambulance, the doors closed as the vehicle pulled away, sirens blaring. Eleanor held Lily's small hand and felt the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. She'd made the call. There was no taking it back now. The ambulance ride felt both endless and too short. Eleanor sat on the bench seat, still holding Lily's hand. The paramedics worked around her, checking monitors, adjusting equipment, speaking in calm, clinical tones that somehow made everything feel more serious. Pulse is elevated, BP low for her age, temp is 100.2. Numbers that meant nothing to Eleanor but clearly meant something to them. Marcus, the lead paramedic, leaned close to Lily. Sweetheart, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the pain? Lily's voice was so small. I don't know numbers that high. The 2 paramedics exchanged a glance. Marcus turned to Eleanor. How long has she been like this? Today? About 20 minutes before I called, but she's been uncomfortable for weeks, maybe longer. And no one's taken her to a doctor? Eleanor felt the accusation in the question, even though it wasn't directed at her. I've been trying to get her mother to. The family was investigated by child services, but everything looked fine on paper. The second paramedic finished quietly. He'd clearly seen this before. Marcus examined Lily gently, asking questions she could barely answer. When he pressed near her lower abdomen, she cried out, a sharp, involuntary sound that made Eleanor's chest tighten. He sat back, his jaw set. This didn't start today. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. No, Eleanor confirmed. It's been building for a while. Marcus made a note on his tablet, his expression unreadable. But Eleanor saw something flicker in his eyes. Anger, maybe. Or sadness. The look of someone who'd seen too many. Children fall through too many cracks. The ambulance pulled up to the emergency entrance. The doors flew open, and suddenly, everything moved at double speed. Hospital staff met them at the entrance. Lily was transferred to a gurney. Someone rattled off medical information. Someone else asked Eleanor questions she still couldn't answer. I'm just her teacher, Eleanor said, feeling helpless. Her mother should be here soon. We'll need parental consent for treatment. She's in pain. Eleanor's voice rose despite herself. Can't you just help her? A doctor, young, calm, kind-faced, stepped forward. We can stabilize and assess, but for anything beyond that, we need a parent or legal guardian. Eleanor nodded, stepping back. They wheeled Lily through double doors, and suddenly she was alone in a bright, sterile waiting room. She collapsed into a plastic chair and called the school. This is Eleanor Brooks. I need you to contact Lily Patterson's mother immediately. Tell her we're at County General Hospital. Is everything okay? No, just find her, please. Eleanor hung up and buried her face in her hands. 20 minutes passed, then 40. Eleanor paced. She checked her phone, obsessively. She tried to pray but couldn't find the words. Finally, the waiting room doors burst open. Lily's mother rushed in, still wearing her work uniform from the diner. Her hair was pulled back messily, her eyes wide with fear. Where is she? Where's Lily? A nurse intercepted her. Are you the mother? Yes, what happened? Is she okay? The doctors are with her now. Come with me. We need your consent for treatment and some medical history. The mother followed, glancing back at Eleanor with an expression Eleanor couldn't quite read. Fear, confusion, maybe anger. Eleanor sank back her chair. An hour crawled by. Finally, the mother emerged from the back, her face pale. She walked directly to Eleanor. They said you called 911. Eleanor stood. Yes, Lily was in severe distress. I didn't know what else to do. The woman's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know it was this bad. I kept thinking it would get better. I was going to take her to the clinic this weekend, I swear. What are the doctors saying? The mother sat down heavily, shaking. They're running tests. They think it's an infection, a bad one. They asked me how long she's been in pain, and her voice broke. I told them a few weeks maybe, but honestly, I don't know. She stopped complaining after a while. I thought that meant she was better. Eleanor sat beside her, saying nothing. I work 2 jobs, the mother continued, her words tumbling out. I'm barely home. When I am home, I'm exhausted. Lily's always been so good, so quiet, never asking for anything. I didn't realize. She covered her face. I should have realized. Before Eleanor could respond, the doctor appeared in the doorway. Ms. Patterson? Both women stood. The doctor's face was calm, professional, but there was something in his eyes that made Eleanor's stomach drop. Your daughter has a severe infection. We're admitting her for IV antibiotics and further testing. Is she going to be okay? The mother whispered. The doctor paused, just for a second, and in that pause, Eleanor heard everything he wasn't saying. She's going to need treatment. How long has she been experiencing symptoms? A few weeks, I think. The doctor's expression didn't change, but his next words landed like stones. This kind of infection doesn't develop in weeks. It takes months. The silence that followed the eyes doctor's words was suffocating. Months, Lily's mother repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The doctor gestured toward a small consultation room. Why don't we sit down? They followed him into a windowless space with uncomfortable chairs and a box of tissues on the table, the kind of room designed for difficult conversations. The doctor sat across from them, his hands folded. I'm Dr. Patel. I've been treating your daughter since she arrived. The tests confirm what we suspected. Lily has a urinary tract infection that has progressed significantly. But that's treatable, right? The mother asked desperately. Antibiotics? Yes, it's treatable. But because it's gone untreated for so long, it's become severe. The infection has spread, causing considerable inflammation and discomfort. Eleanor watched the mother's face crumble. I didn't know, she whispered. She said her stomach hurt sometimes, but kids always say that, don't they? I gave her medicine. I thought, Mrs. Patterson, Dr. Patel said gently, I need you to understand something. This level of infection doesn't happen overnight. Based on what we're seeing, Lily has likely been experiencing significant pain for several months. The mother shook her head. No, she would have told me. Children don't always tell, Dr. Patel interrupted softly. Especially when they've learned that complaining doesn't lead to relief. They adapt. They normalize their pain. Eleanor felt those words settle in her chest like lead. The doctor continued, his voice measured but firm. What I'm trying to help you understand is that your daughter has been suffering, really suffering, for a long time, every day. The room went silent. Every day, the mother echoed, the reality finally breaking through. Oh God, every single day? Dr. Patel didn't answer. He didn't need to. The mother's face collapsed into her hands. I should have known. I should have paid more attention. There's never enough time, never enough money, and she was always so good, so quiet. Her words dissolved into sobs. Eleanor sat, frozen, watching a woman come apart under the weight of what she'd missed. Dr. Patel waited a moment before speaking again. The good news is that we caught it before it caused permanent damage. With treatment, Lily will recover fully. The mother looked up, mascara streaking her face. But if Miss Brooks hadn't called, the doctor's expression grew more serious. If this had continued untreated much longer, we'd be looking at potential kidney involvement, sepsis, or other serious complications. The fact that someone intervened today likely prevented a much worse outcome. He let that sink in before adding quietly, if you'd waited even a few more days, the prognosis would have been very different. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Lily's mother turned to Eleanor, her eyes red and swollen. You saved her. You saved my baby. Eleanor shook her head. No. The mother's voice was fierce now. I should have listened to you. When you called, when you wanted to meet, when you kept trying to tell me something was wrong, I brushed you off. I was defensive. I thought you were judging me. I wasn't, but you were right, and I was too tired, too proud, too overwhelmed to see what was happening to my own daughter. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. What kind of mother doesn't notice her child is in pain every single day? Dr. Patel spoke gently. The kind who's doing everything she can to survive. This isn't about being a bad parent, it's about a system that makes it nearly impossible for families like yours to thrive. The mother wiped her eyes. Can I see her? Of course. She's resting now, but she's stable. We'll keep her here for several days to monitor her response to treatment. They stood. The mother paused at the door, turning. Back to Eleanor. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for not giving up on her when I was too blind to see. Eleanor nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. After the mother left, Eleanor remained in the consultation room, staring at the wall. She thought about all the times she'd doubted herself, all the times she'd been told to back off, to trust the system, to accept that some things were beyond her control. She thought about how close she'd come to doing nothing. Dr. Patel reappeared in the doorway. You're the teacher who called it in? Yes. He studied her for a moment. You did the right thing. A lot of people would have looked the other way. I almost did, Eleanor admitted. But you didn't. He paused. You should know. In my 15 years as a pediatrician, I've seen dozens of cases like this. Children suffering in plain sight because everyone around them assumes someone else is handling it. You didn't assume. That matters. After he left, Eleanor sat alone in the quiet room. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt exhausted, sad and angry at a world where a 5-year-old could hurt every day, and almost no one noticed. But she also felt something else, something small but undeniable. Relief. Because for once, staying quiet hadn't been easier than speaking up. Over the following days, Eleanor watched the aftermath unfold from a distance. Lily remained in the hospital for 5 days. The antibiotics worked, slowly reversing months of untreated eye infection. Eleanor visited once, bringing a stuffed bear and a card signed by all the students. Lily was sitting up in bed, color returning to her cheeks. When she saw Eleanor, her face brightened. "Miss Brooks." Eleanor sat in the chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Better." "The doctors say I can go home soon." She paused. "My tummy doesn't hurt anymore." Eleanor smiled, though her eyes stung. "I'm so glad. Mama says you're the one who called the ambulance." "I did." Lily reached out and took Eleanor's hand, the same small hand that had gripped hers in the ambulance. "Thank you for helping me." "You're very welcome." When Eleanor left the hospital that afternoon, she noticed a social worker in the hallway speaking with Lily's mother. The conversation looked serious but not hostile. Later, Principal Chen filled her in. Child Services has reopened the case, not to remove Lily from the home, but to provide support services. The mother's been connected with healthcare assistance, reduced-hour work programs, and family counseling. And Lily? She'll have regular medical follow-ups. The school will also monitor her more closely. Eleanor nodded slowly. So the system is finally working. It's not perfect, Margaret admitted, but it's better than it was. The following week, a formal review was conducted. Eleanor sat across from a state social worker, who asked pointed questions about why previous reports hadn't triggered more aggressive intervention. "The home appeared adequate during our initial visit," the worker explained defensively. "There were no visible signs of abuse or severe neglect. Just a child in constant pain that no one bothered to investigate further," Eleanor said quietly. The worker didn't respond. Lily's mother attended a mandatory meeting with school administration. She wasn't facing criminal charges. The situation didn't meet that threshold. But she was required to participate in parenting support programs and ensure Lily received ongoing medical care. Eleanor saw her in the hallway afterward. The woman looked smaller somehow, worn down by guilt and exhaustion. "Miss Brooks," she called out. Eleanor stopped. "I just wanted you to know. I got approved for aid. I'm cutting back to one job. It won't be easy, but I'll be home more. I'll see her more." She paused. "I won't miss it again." "I believe you," Eleanor said, and, surprisingly, she did. 2 weeks after the hospital stay, Lily returned to school. She looked different. Healthier, yes, but also lighter somehow. She smiled more easily. She played at recess without constantly shifting in discomfort. She raised her hand during lessons. She was, finally, just a 5-year-old child. But Eleanor knew the scars would remain, invisible ones that might take years to fully heal, the knowledge that she'd suffered while people looked away. The learned behavior of staying quiet about pain. Those things didn't disappear overnight. One afternoon, as Eleanor organized supplies, Lily approached her desk. "Miss Brooks, can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey. Why did you keep trying to help me when everyone said I was fine?" Eleanor set down the markers she'd been sorting and looked at the little girl, really looked at her. "Because you weren't fine," she said, simply. And sometimes the most important thing we can do is pay attention when everyone else stops looking. Lily considered this, then nodded seriously. I'm glad you looked. Me too, sweetheart. As the weeks passed, Eleanor found herself reflecting on everything that had happened. The system hadn't failed completely. It had eventually responded, but it had come so close to being too late. How many other children were slipping through similar cracks right now? How many Lilies were learning to smile through pain because the adults around them were too busy, too tired, or too willing to accept fine as an answer? Eleanor didn't have solutions to those questions. She was just one teacher, about to retire, with limited power to change broken systems. But she'd learned something crucial. Sometimes doing the right thing meant refusing to accept easy answers, even when everyone around you insisted you should. Winter arrived in quiet increments. December brought holiday decorations, pageant rehearsals, and the gentle chaos Eleanor had witnessed 35 times before. But this year felt different. She found herself watching her students more carefully, not just Lily, but all of them, noticing the quiet ones, asking questions when something felt off, trusting her instincts instead of dismissing them. She'd spent years teaching herself not to get too involved. Now, in her final months, she was learning to lean in again. Lily thrived. Her medical appointments became routine, monthly checkups that her mother actually kept. She no longer asked for the bathroom constantly. She participated fully in class activities. She even made a best friend, a chatty girl named Emma, who declared Lily the nicest person ever. One afternoon in early January, Eleanor overheard them at the art table. My mom says I'm lucky Miss Brooks was my teacher, Lily said, carefully coloring inside the lines. Why? Emma asked. Lily thought for a moment. Because she pays attention. Such simple words, such profound weight. In February, the school held a retirement celebration for Eleanor. Colleagues gave speeches, students made cards. There was cake and punch and the awkward sentiment of institutional goodbyes. Lily gave Eleanor a drawing, not of pain this time, but of two figures holding hands under a bright sun. You and me, she explained. Eleanor hugged her carefully. I'll treasure this always. As the celebration wound down, Principal Chen pulled Eleanor aside. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. Eleanor looked at her, surprised. I should have listened more carefully, should have trusted your judgment instead of hiding behind protocol. Margaret's expression was sincere. You taught me something important these last few months. Sometimes the rules need to bend for the right reasons. Thank you for saying that. We're implementing new training for staff. How to recognize signs that aren't obvious. How to advocate for students even when the system pushes back. She paused. It's not much, but it's something. Eleanor smiled. It's more than something. On her final day of teaching, Eleanor arrived early. She walked through her empty classroom, trailing her fingers along familiar desks, remembering decades of small faces and big dreams. She thought about all the children she'd taught, the ones who'd flourished and the ones who'd struggled, the ones she'd helped and the ones she wished she'd helped more. She thought about Lily, how close that situation had come to tragedy, how easy it would have been to look away. The students arrived, filling the room with noise and energy. They went through their final day together, songs, stories, hugs, promises to remember each other. At dismissal, parents came to pick up their children. Eleanor shook hands, accepted thanks, deflected praise. Finally, only Lily remained, waiting by the cubbies. Her mother appeared in the doorway, on time, Eleanor noted. She looked healthier too, less exhausted, more present. Thank you, Miss Brooks, she said, for everything. Take care of each other, Eleanor replied. After they left, Eleanor stood alone in her classroom one last time. She didn't cry. She didn't feel regret. She simply felt complete. 35 years, hundreds of students, countless lessons taught and learned, and in the end, The most important lesson hadn't been about reading or math or following rules. It had been about refusing to look away when someone needed to be seen. 3 months later, Eleanor was sitting in her garden on a warm spring morning when she heard a car pull up. She looked up to see Lily and her mother walking up the driveway. "Miss Brooks." Lily ran forward, then stopped shyly. Eleanor set down her gardening gloves and smiled. What a wonderful surprise. Lily's mother held up a small bakery box. "We were nearby and thought we'd stop by. Hope that's okay." "More than okay. Come sit." They settled on the porch steps. Lily chattered about her new teacher, her new school friends, a book she was reading. She was vibrant, animated, healthy. Her mother watched her daughter with an expression Eleanor recognized, gratitude mixed with lingering guilt. "She's doing really well," Eleanor observed. "She is. We both are." The mother paused. "I got promoted at work. Benefits now, real health care. And I'm only working one job, so I'm actually home when she needs me." "I'm so happy to hear that. It almost didn't happen, though." Her voice dropped. "If you hadn't." "But I did," Eleanor said gently. "And you did too. You got help. You made changes. That takes courage." After a while, Lily's mother excused herself to take a phone call, leaving Eleanor and Lily alone. They sat in comfortable silence watching birds flit between trees. Then Lily scooted closer. Without words, without preamble, she reached out and took Eleanor's hand. Eleanor looked down at their joined hands, wrinkled and young, teacher and student, two people whose lives had intersected at exactly the right moment. Lily didn't say thank you, didn't make a speech. She simply held on, her small fingers wrapped around Eleanor's, squeezing gently. They stayed like that for several long seconds, no words necessary. When Lily finally let go, she looked up with clear, bright eyes. "You listened when nobody else would." Eleanor felt her throat tighten. "You deserve to be heard." Soon after, they left, Lily waving from the car window until they turned the corner. Eleanor returned to her garden, kneeling among the flowers. She thought about the path that had led her here, the doubts, the resistance, the pressure to stay silent, the choice to speak anyway. She'd spent 35 years teaching children, but in her final months, a 5-year-old had taught her something profound. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet refusal to accept that suffering is normal. Sometimes it's making a phone call when everyone says you're overreacting. Sometimes it's just paying attention when it would be easier to look away. Eleanor planted a row of sunflowers, bright, resilient, reaching toward light. She didn't know what Lily's future held. She couldn't guarantee there wouldn't be other struggles, other obstacles. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Lily would remember that once someone saw her pain and refused to call it fine. And maybe, just maybe, that memory would give her the courage to keep speaking up when something was wrong, to trust that her voice mattered, to believe she deserved to be heard. Eleanor stood brushing dirt from her knees. The afternoon sun warmed her face. Birds sang. Life continued. And somewhere across town, a little girl who'd once heard every day was running, playing, laughing, finally, beautifully free. Sometimes, saving a life doesn't require heroism, just the courage not to look away.